Recording in progress.
I didn't hear anything from Daniel, but.
He's not here. He said he's not coming.
Okay,
You're recording.
there we go. All right, I'll call to order the Town of Mount Desert Planning Board meeting for November 13th, 2024, and welcome aboard. So here we are, still doing in-person meetings and also on Zoom. And if you are on Zoom, please sign into chat so we have a record of who's attending. And it looks like it's our Vice Chair, Tracy Loftus Keller, joining us online tonight. Hi, Tracy.
Hi there.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you have your hand up.
I don't mean to have my hand up. There.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us. And I'll start off and make introductions. On William Keller online is Vice Chair. And then we have Gail Marshall, Alan Kimmerly, and Ann Dalton. And we're all full-time members here, and we'll all be voting tonight on anything that needs to be voted on. And kicking off the agenda, the first item on the agenda tonight is we've got some approval of minutes from the 23rd of October.
I move approval.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
And
Tracy.
Tracy Keller, aye.
Great, thank you. All right.
Do you want a separate motion for the checklist, or do you assume that's included?
Usually we've always done a motion just for the minutes.
And in the motion, part of the
Okay,
minutes.
Mhm.
the
thank you.
checklist.
That's a good question.
Hold on.
All righty. All right, item 3 tonight, section 5, conditional use approval. 5.4, review procedures. Bear with me as I read through this. So tonight we're talking about pre-application procedures. Prior to submitting a conditional use approval application, an applicant or authorized agent may request to appear at a regular meeting of the planning board to discuss the proposed project. The pre-application review shall not be construed as representing either the pendency or the commencement of the application process per se. And tonight we have the Harborview Corporation, agent is Penny Fernald, location is 10 Huntington Road, Northeast Harbor, tax map 24, lot 125, zone is village commercial, and purpose is discuss signage. And was this one advertised?
It was advertised in the Ellsworth American, the Mid-Coast Villager, and the Mount Desert Islander on Thursday, October 31st, 2024.
All right, great. And I'll ask if there's any conflict of interest on the board. None heard, and I'm gonna turn it over to you guys to make an introduction, and we'll go from there.
I'm Penny Farrell, and we're looking to take a sign that is on the front of the Northeastern Pound Market. It's been up there for about 30+ years. That's started to deteriorate. And we kind of like to bring it out of the 70s and into this time frame.
Yep.
It says restaurant and lounge, and we would like to change the wording to restaurant and market.
Mm-hmm.
And the backing, the size would be all the same. We're not changing size. We would only like to take lounge off and put market. And change it to it have a white backing, black letters, and they'd be vinyl letters on it.
All righty. Kim, you want to give us a little background on this?
You want me to give you a background?
I
on
have
Well-
some things that I've written up if
Yeah,
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 absolutely,
sure.
please. I mean, I could give a little background on this too, and please correct me if my memory fades here, but you know, we have talked about this before. You guys have come before us informally and we just you know, really reviewed the same request, and one of the things with the request here was that you know, the sign does predate the land use ordinance. I think that was all determined, and yeah, and that the board never officially received an application on this. And that,
And I guess in communication and process, no, I did not do our application.
Yeah.
I did present some stuff to you earlier,
Mhm,
and I tried to go back to the seventies to find the photo
yeah,
of the original sign, which it was large letters that were going across the front of the restaurant, a lot larger than they are now.
yeah,
They took out the majority of that food line there. And we were unable to, and unfortunately, Ed and Eileen Branch operated the Maston Rudder. They were leasing the building from 72 for about 13 or 14 years. Of course, they lost their lives of a fire, and I checked with their family and looked at the photos
mhm,
when
right. But. So just to, you know, looking at it, you know, when the board last looked at it, you know, and again, it was in the context of just the informal discussion about it and feedback on it. The board's consensus at the time was, you know, that wasn't any issue with the pending application, just that the board was mostly sounded off that we made the recommendation that you just put in an application and come before the board, and you know, it was going to be considered, you know, it's a pre-existing legal non-conforming sign, and we were gonna just review it within that context, and we had the similar submittal then, and we just left it that, yeah, please put an application together and let's get to it. Go
Well,
for
I
it.
wasn't part of that, so I wasn't on the board then. You know, I spent some time reading the provision of the ordinances that seems to apply to this, and I think one thing we need to sort of be clear about is that our job as a planning board is not to decide necessarily what's reasonable or, I mean, ideally, things line up that way. And our job is to not alter, because we do believe in the rule of law. And our job is not to alter what the ordinance says on our own, because that's what town meeting's for. And as I read 6B16, if I'm understanding this, first of all, we have a 32 square foot size limit. And that's a restriction, and then we have the definition of the outdoor sign that says no sign shall be changed, structurally altered or erected or relocated except in conformance with the ordinance. And the ordinance now has this limitation that probably wasn't there in the 70s. It says in restrictions and limitations on size regarding size limit that no sign shall exceed 32 square feet in area. Nor shall the aggregate, so when I read that, nor shall the aggregate of all signs on site pertaining to any business exceed 32 square feet, unless conditional use approval of the planning board is obtained. So when I first read that, I thought, oh, well, just say you just need to do an application and we consider a sensible conditional use alteration. But the way I actually read that section, and I don't get to pick and choose whether I like how that's written, except for the future, and perhaps have a voice in that, is the first sentence says no sign shall exceed 32 square feet, period. And then the second sentence, which is 32 square feet in the aggregate as it pertains to all the signs on the property, that can be modified by a conditional use permit. I don't read it that we have, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I don't read it that we have the latitude to grant a conditional use approval for a sign. And I don't know what the square footage of this sign is. It would be useful for us in an application to know that. But that's how I'm reading this section and what I think our restrictions may be. Which is not to prejudge an application, because you may come in and tell me that the sign is not there, it's 32 square feet. And if the sign's less than 32 square feet, then the planning board, but that combined with other signs exceed 32 square feet, then we could maybe do a conditional use permit for the total number of square feet for signs. I don't know if you're following what I'm trying to make sense here. But I think if the sign itself is bigger than 32 square feet, I'm not sure how much latitude we have. So I thought I had a way through it, and then as I read it again, I thought,
think
maybe
the
we don't.
size, I had the size listed on there, it's 22, was it 22 high, and it's about 7 foot long.
331 inches.
The 22 would be inches.
22 inches wide and 27 feet 7 inches long.
I guess that's about 53 square feet. I would,
It's 50.5, so it's 944 square feet.
Right. So that makes that particular sign, that single sign, run afoul of the current zoning ordinance.
Is it 32 feet wide, or is it
32 square feet,
Square feet.
Like 12 by 8.
yeah. Yeah, it could be anything, it could be 2 by 16, but it's, or 1 by,
Or 1 by
32.
32.
So I don't know how that impacts your consideration, but that's when I just read the language of the ordinance, that's how I read the ordinance, and I'm not free as a board member to read it other than how it reads. I mean, whether I like that outcome or not, I
But if
don't
you're
know.
going on that same background that it's on now, because that panel comes off the building.
Sure,
That can't be rewrapped, that background, and then what is changed
right.
if we use on that same.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's not a practical problem or it's a good solution.
We're just trying right now in the process, we are redoing the deck rails down there.
Mhm.
And we're just trying to bring her updated, the guys are doing a great job of the restaurant.
Yeah.
What's behind the sign? Is it,
It's vinyl siding behind there,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
There's a
just
flat
screwed on.
square. There's a flat square that's all gray, you know,
mhm.
and that's kind of like the background of the sign, and then the restaurant lounge letters are raised.
right.
And they're deteriorating, they're broken.
Oh,
If you were to pressure wash it or anything, it's not gonna help it, it's gonna make it worse.
Let me just also say, I'm one person
Yeah.
and I'm not,
We
you know,
just think
other
it would
people
look-
may have a better interpretation that gets you where you need to
We just
go.
think it would look funny with that smaller, we had the mock-up
Yeah.
of the smaller sign, and it
Yeah,
just looks like it's gonna be lost on that building.
yeah,
It should, I would think the ordinance would take into consideration the proportion of the building in terms of a sign being appropriate or not appropriate. I mean, a smaller sign is not appropriate. It's a huge building.
That's why ordinances are always being amended. I mean, seriously, that doesn't meet your immediate needs. But
I'm surprised the town hasn't distinguished between a sign that is almost like part of a roof. And like completely on a roof line, with one that is on a street and
Right,
being visible from a roadway, or, you know, a sign, like, when I think of a sign, it's like
on the
on big
grass.
posts on the, at the front of a building.
Yeah, you guys have like
That
a
is,
short mansard roof on that
Yep.
building and the
Yep.
sign is on the slope of the roof.
yeah,
and what if the background to the sign was part of the roof, a different color of vinyl, just hypothesizing here, and you just had the letters attached to a roof line, how would you apply?
That's exactly why I asked the
Okay.
question, what's behind it is,
Right.
I mean, I wonder if like just the letters could be applied.
Well, I'd like to, offer a different perspective on the ordinance.
Mhm.
I'm fairly for describe, the ordinance does mention maintenance of the sign, I believe it's one of the last sentences in there. And it says signs must be maintained in good condition, and so one perspective is what can one do using the same footprint of a sign? What liberty do we have to maintain and upgrade it?
Yeah,
You know?
we're in the process, we wanna replace the vinyl.
You know, if we were gonna
Oh, no.
replace the letters, be exactly the same, for example,
Mhm.
you know, that's changing the sign. You know, if we switched them from 3D to vinyl, that would be changing the sign, would we have to come here and submit a proposal to maintain the sign? That, and then also, is this change of font and language, same number of letters, would that be considered a change or maintenance?
it says no sign shall hereafter be erected, altered, or changed, except in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance. I get what you're going at, and it's interesting.
Sometimes you have to alter something fundamentally in order to maintain it,
Yep,
you know?
Yeah.
So it's contradictory.
yep.
Is
It
there a,
depends
is,
on other people's perspectives as
Yeah.
well.
is there like a threshold there, Kim? Like if you have to maintain more than 50% of it or something like
No,
that, or
just, neatly
some
painted and free from
appraised
hazards.
dollar value or some,
No,
no.
Nothing like that.
here,
It could be wooden. And it could start to rot out and you have to replace the whole thing.
If that thing didn't have a back to it, would the area of the sign just be the area of the font then?
the individual letters, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd,
So I mean, it's a display, device, figure, painting, drawing, message, place card, poster, billboard, or other figure which is designed, intended, or used to advertise or inform.
but you would be measuring the letters,
Mhm.
not the backing board of it.
The letters would be the same size going back.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have a back on it, then it wouldn't technically be the 22 inches by 27.7. It would just be the area of it would be the size of the font. The area of the letters.
I think our overall signage is still non-conforming.
Yeah,
Right.
you'd still be over.
What, you mean the overall signs?
Yeah,
Well,
for
but then if it's one sign that's more than 32 square feet, then it's not clear we can do anything about it. If that's how unless we give a creative interpretation of how we size the sign. But if the signs in the aggregate are greater than 32 square feet, like if that one's 24 and you've got some others that add up to like 36 square feet, then the planning board has the latitude to issue a conditional use permit to exceed that number. So that's. I know,
Well, there's several signs.
yes, so I think we could entertain a motion to deal with that if we can get. Or an application to deal with that, if we can get, I mean. Practically speaking. It shouldn't be a problem. But that's not. We're not entitled to freestyle. That's why we need to figure out, because the town passes these ordinances and it's our job to enforce them, not to create our own version of what we think. However, creative interpretations are always available or possibly available. So, and I think that's what Bill is trying to craft here.
I'd like to think the board always reviews applications in the affirmative.
Yeah. Yes, but without doing violence to the plain language of the ordinance. That's all. That's what I'm trying to do. So if we can come up with an interpretation, your interpretation.
Well,
that's-
we gotta be careful because I mean, this is just an informal,
Yes,
they're just kind of gauging the temperature of the board.
Yep.
And, as they were before us previously, we didn't, necessarily offer any opinion, specific to the potential application. We just encouraged them to come before the board, and the board had the finding that a project like this should be reviewed in a public forum, just in case anybody, and we are a public board, it is in the public environment that, if then the public should be informed of it, and if in case anybody in the public wanted to comment on it. So I think that was just the consensus of the board last time is, well, look, let's get to it and, take that and turn it into a conditional use application. Let's review this for you.
and I think all I'm trying to do is tell you what the hurdles are, as I understand them, that you'll have to get through. But I'm not saying you won't get through them. I'm just saying, well, we have to somehow reconcile the language of the statute in order to. I think some ways have been suggested where that might work. But know that those are issues that you'd have to confront in a. At least that, as I read it, I may be out in left field.
Yeah, we just wanted to try, we had
Yeah.
urged Kim on the railing, which we are moving forward with. and
Yep.
We would like to replace the vinyl up there, but we don't dare do it because of that sign.
Yeah.
And we only have a short time frame really to replace the vinyl before they get going, gearing up again in the spring.
Yeah, and the clock starts ticking once you,
Yeah,
do something to a pre-existing legal non-conforming construction sign or whatever it is. Any thoughts, Alan?
Well, I know the town wants to put a limit on the size of signs. That's why the ordinance is there. And so I don't know if we should be approving signs that are almost twice what the town allows. There's signs right below it down on the lawn that kind of state the same thing. So it's kind of a
and
repetition.
that
of what
one
we-
is separated. That one was controversial back when my dad. But actually, we had to have it remade a second time to make it as a separate sign. So one is for the Kimball Terrace and one is for the restaurant. And that's another one we have not touched that needs repair in the back because of. We don't dare to.
How is the allowable area determined? Is that for the totality of the property?
Yeah, it's for uses. If you have a multi-building, a building with
It's-
multi-businesses in it, each business would have 32 square feet in aggregate.
Oh, okay.
So why would we be considering the restaurant and market?
It's separate
To-
from the hotel.
Yeah, well, it's separate from the
That's right.
hotel
So
and
they're
they're-
allowed 32 square feet, and the hotel's allowed 32
yeah,
square feet.
so that's what it.
Cause they're two different businesses.
Mhm.
Is the market a separate business?
And then they're all combined.
Mhm.
We just felt that the lounge was
I mean, that's a seventies word.
So
Yeah,
you don't see lounge anymore. It used to be a lounge back when it was the Master Rudder. When it was there,
You guys need like
big thing here in town.
velvet curtains over the windows.
And I hear what you say about the limit of signs, the size, but I can't believe that there's no consideration for proportion of the building. There's no other building that, other than probably, well, I don't know, the school, that is as large as
Mhm.
Mhm.
that building. So it makes no sense to put a small sign.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
the-
crazy.
Unfortunately, the ordinance that we have before us doesn't differentiate between size of,
Yeah, there's not a lot of,
a lot of gray area.
a lot of gray area where the board. Oh, Tracy, go for it.
Yep, the only thing I wanted to say is that, we are supposed to be moving towards conformity with the ordinance. So it's hard to please all the, it's hard to reconcile all the parts. That's all.
Yeah, it's tough to have those aesthetic discussions because the land use ordinance doesn't really enable us to, I mean, there's, maybe some, as we have seen from previous applications before the board under 6A1, there's some, you know, areas under 6A1, which
Compatibility.
compatibility, what's compatibility, and so there's been many discussions over the years about how far in the weeds can the board really go, kind of regulating something like that, but we've definitely offered opinions about compatibility, and I can think of a few projects in town where compatibility has come up, and I think maybe the sign scale issue would have a potential compatibility discussion to it.
When the district is located as measured in terms of its physical size, visual impact. Proximity of the structure.
If we were replacing what's there now with the exact same thing, but it said restaurant and market, gray background, white letters, same number of letters. It's basically, even if it said restaurant and lounge, you're just replacing with the exact same thing. Would that be a change, or would that be maintenance of what's there?
The big change. What if we dropped around the lounge and put restaurant?
Well, then it's presumably that's smaller.
So if you put back exactly what's there, it's a change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a change.
You take that,
So how, I know
What's-
maintenance of it, that's how you maintain something.
Talks about maintenance.
all signs must be maintained in good condition.
Yeah.
Those letters are cracking and.
Kim, I think about
Must be
like,
kept clean, neatly painted, and free from all hazards such as, but not limited to faulty wiring or loosened fastenings. And must be maintained at all times, in such safe conditions,
what about within the context of like of the nonconformity section for when you're trying to differentiate between maintenance and change, and you've got the criteria of the, like the dollar value of it or something like that. I mean, that you are, depending upon the scale and the type of request, I mean, that, you are allowed maintenance. I mean, but it's a scale question or a value question, and,
I thought about section 4, but it relates to structures. And this isn't a structure.
yeah.
I thought about that. I'm like,
Just
maybe-
that's. I mean, this is a challenge, this is new territory
It
for the
is,
board, because, I mean, all of our non-conforming projects, at least I've reviewed in the 10 years here, you know, have been within the context of section 4.
Right.
And
And
that,
I totally get why someone not on the board, this is like a crazy discussion. I totally get that. But we are trying to interpret in good faith the standards that we have been given by the town. And those can change. I mean, we have. That's why every year we have a warrant and why we have changes to the zoning ordinances posed for town consideration, and that's so.
I would like to think the town would like to see an improved modern, up-to-date sign, so there's some
Mhm.
consideration to be given.
Does the sign have to be so large?
I mean, it's a fact of distance, people already don't understand that it's
Span
a
of the
restaurant,
restaurant,
it's a
so-
hotel. People come in there and they're like, oh, we didn't even know you were a restaurant.
Well, you
And,
guys got a lot of signage. I don't know how to do it.
well, it happens fairly frequently, and, you know, so we're trying to, she's adding the railings, nice, you know. Modern railings to code, and we're doing our best to, you know, improve the space down there for.
We just did down on the hotel, we've had a lot of compliments on the other end of the hotel, what we did last year.
Mhm.
Which this is what we're trying to do is move forward and work on their end this year.
Well, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to try to get there. It's
We
just,
just don't know how to go with the sign to move forward to what we need to prepare.
right,
We're also in a tough spot when you consider the aggregate square footage of all of our signs, because we've got road frontage on 2 sides of the building,
mhm,
so. Just the signs on one side of the building combined are gonna be over. When you start talking about both sides of the property, we're way over the town limit, but there's no consideration for that, so.
but what I'm saying is, the way the size limit language reads. The planning board would have discretion, if it's just one sign that's more than 32 square feet. It's not clear that we have the authority to waive that requirement for one sign. But if you add up the signs and that equals more than 32 square feet, the way this language is written. We then perhaps have the authority to entertain a request for a conditional use permit to waive that requirement for the whole ball of wax. But as I'm reading, I mean, it sounds, and I'm not sure what the purpose of this is. I didn't write it. I didn't. But that's how I'm reading it, and I don't know if anybody else here is reading it like that, and I'd be happy to know that I'm wrong. But that's how I'm reading it. So that I don't think is an issue for you, that there's more than.
It might be a benefit to us.
Well, no, it won't allow you to then obviate the fact that one of the signs is bigger than 32 square feet. But if you add them all up, then, because what it says is, no sign shall exceed 32 square feet in area, period. Then it says, nor shall the aggregate of all signs on the site pertaining to any business exceed 32 square feet in the area unless conditional use approval of the planning board is obtained. So the way they separated that and didn't give the planning board authority to issue a conditional use permit for one sign that exceeds 32 square feet, but if you add them all up and it's more, then that's my problem. That's where I'm stuck.
And to me, that doesn't make any sense, because, I mean, you have a period there, but it says nor, so to me, that connects both of those thoughts, but.
Yeah,
Well, to me, reading language,
Right,
reading legislative language, I would say they should have a comma, not a period. And I know that gets esoteric, but I think the first provision is no sign, and then it's like. No signs, no signs in the aggregate, but you can alter that. Which, I guess the argument would be that you're not allowing huge signs. But if you've got a sign here on this side and a sign here on this side, and that all is more than 32 square feet, then we can do something about that. But not about great big signs. And that, to. I first read it,
I get that, no.
yeah, I
Yeah.
first read it and thought, oh, we're good, and then I thought, oh,
Right.
wait, there's a period there. It's two separate. Subjects.
Tracy, have anything to say there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems to.
Tracy,
No, I don't really have anything to add. I'm listening though.
yeah,
Sorry.
I was gonna say again, and again, I just
Yeah.
go back to section 4, because that's where my familiarity with nonconformity
Hmm.
lies, and I understand we are in a different section here with section 6, but. When we're dealing with nonconformities in section 4. Often we are dealing with the continuance of nonconformity. I mean, we're not tasked with erasing the nonconformity off the map. I mean, there's almost always a continuance of it, and then we're looking at, okay, what is the proposed change within the continuance of the nonconformity? And I would think like, there has been, I within that process, there is gray area of, in terms of, when we're talking about, making it conforming to the greatest practical extent here. And I would think in this kind of context, that there would be an associated gray area where the board would be enabled to look at it within the context of the continuance of the nonconformity.
I respect what you're saying, and I thought about that too, but I confronted in every paragraph in 4, the word structure. And then I went to the definition of structure, and it did not include.
And that's not science.
And,
Yeah.
but I appreciate that, and just as
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the idea of.
I appreciate you appreciate.
But I appreciate just the idea of like figuring out the letters of the sign versus the whole
Yeah,
sign and
and
figuring
then-
out whether we can do it
Just
that way.
thinking of like
Yep.
process of the how to process this, because this is a first.
Well,
I've been on the board that long, I keep hearing that at every meeting, this is.
while I've been brainstorming personally, I was curious what historically the process is if a new business takes over a location on Main Street, for example, and wants to just use the same footprint and change from one business name to the other. Do they have to come get a conditional use permit if the sign is,
That doesn't happen.
it's never happened?
No.
Well, they have to get,
People
they have to
they've
get a
already-
permit for a
they've
sign,
reapplied,
right?
yeah, I mean, they've applied for a new sign
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
using existing brackets, but no one ever uses the same footprint of somebody else's sign.
Mhm.
Right. It'd be a new sign that would comply with the ordinance. And we don't see those, that would be.
Did
Kim's
I,
able to interpret.
did
that.
I hear the suggestion correctly that the sign might just say restaurant?
We
Mm.
could if that's, I don't know how you guys feel about it.
But you do have a market in there too, right? That you're
We do.
selling whole
Yeah.
retail fish.
Well,
and
we've
stuff.
seen before, back when they took over the restaurant, we had the market, but we were selling stuff prior to that when we had retail restaurant,
Yeah,
so it wasn't a.
It'd make our job a lot easier if that sign up on the roof was reduced to 32 square feet.
oh, then there wouldn't be any,
Yeah, I mean.
there wouldn't be anything we'd have to do, yeah.
We know
mean,
that,
it's-
but it's just gonna look kind of out of place up there, it's gonna, and we can't. Put any different lighting up there.
Plus underneath the sign is gonna be.
Different.
If you kept it gray and with white lettering and you change restaurant lounge to restaurant market, it's the same number of letters. And you're not changing the color, you're not changing the size, you're just. Those letters are falling down and they're deteriorating in the sun.
Right.
So I would consider that to be faulty bracketing.
Mhm.
I mean, you're opening a can of worms by filing a change in the conditional use application, but if you're trying to maintain your property. You know, it's,
And I do, you get a lot of people to do for the marina, they don't know, cause the sign on the lawn. The way that was designed, my dad did that, so would not stick out when he did have that design
Mhm.
in mind. And they don't see it until they come really around the corner.
Mhm.
But for the boaters, they don't realize a lot of times there is a restaurant up there.
Mhm.
They see the sign.
Yeah,
You don't happen to, I mean, the only thing that I've heard that potentially could work is Bill's suggestion that we somehow calculate the letters. The
Yeah,
size
like-
of the letters. in the
Yeah,
area.
like you don't have the backer torn to it, and it's just the letters.
Attached to the roof.
they're not gonna set really very well on that, cause we're not
Yeah.
going back to we don't wanna go back to the plastic letters because they do
Yeah.
not hold out for that direct sunlight.
Yeah.
That sign's been there 30+ years right now.
Tracy, you got your hand up again.
Oops.
And you're on mute.
I didn't mean to put my hand up,
Oh,
sorry.
darn, we keep thinking there's a solution out there. Um.
They're a shorter word for restaurant.
Oh,
Yeah.
Food.
Growth.
Mhm.
bistro.
And there's
Mhm.
nothing in the ordinance that excludes or includes grandfathering? A sign?
Yeah, I mean, so the. And again, I gotta talk about it in the context of section 4. I mean, where the grandfathering comes in is, I think that the grandfathering doesn't. Preclude a project from the review process. It defines the lanes the review process need to operate in, if that makes sense. So like, you think of the 100-year-old camp on Long Pond, that's, -3 feet from the water. That's where that's gonna immediately be defined as a non-conforming project under the definition of section 4, and then we're gonna have all the review criteria for that. And again, like I was saying earlier, is that I think where the grandfathering comes into play, I think there's an element of continuance that's granted with grandfathering within the context of the non-conforming review process. And and often there's a little bit of give and take to it, like, okay, maybe the camp's got to scoot back 3 feet, or you have to, what you're doing has to stick to the original ridge height, or things like that, but you're still working within the non-conformity, so. I think that's how I have seen grandfathering factor into the conditional use application process, so.
So like Adam said, it's a continuance. The sign has been there for close to 50 years, or over 30. And so it's a continuance in terms of maintenance that,
Mhm.
but it's been there forever. It's been there as long as the building's been there. So, but it has to have some upkeep,
Yeah,
it has to have some maintenance.
Is there any way to interpret this particular sign, which is not freestanding, as part of the structure, because it's attached
well, that's.
to the
That's
structure?
a good point, and I think that was
And
a relevant point Anne brought up too, is just how this is integrated into the roof there.
right. And so it's non-conforming. And if it's considered an alteration of the structure.
Are you doing what, it's just the siding runs behind that?
The siding behind that, what we wanna replace with, we put a gray
Mm,
siding, maybe just a bit darker than what's on there right now, similar to what we put on the building at the other end, the shapes.
Mhm.
So it's kind of hard without that back panel, we cannot keep a sign on the building there against those vinyl shapes. Especially now, most of them are using vinyl letters to do signs.
So that's an alteration of the structure. For the repair of this surface of the structure and,
We have to remove
there's-
that sign in order to fix those vinyl.
right,
Could you figure out what the area of just the letters is? Do you know?
Yeah, might even have it in email, because my old company actually calculated it for it. but-
Yeah.
Letters are over 30.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
so I guess the other question is whether or not we can somehow construct it. In good faith, construct the argument that this is an alteration of the structure and that this sign
Towards maintenance.
is. I mean, the alteration of the structure is not non-conforming, I don't think.
Maintenance of a pre-existing legal non-conforming sign.
Well, but it's not. We gotta get into structure somehow, if you're gonna use four. And the question is it part of the structure? As opposed to the sign on the lawn. I fear we're doing violence to the sign regulation,
Yeah.
but,
I think if it didn't have the siding behind it, like it wasn't applied. It wasn't a surface application to an existing. Exterior finish over it. It would be more integrated into the structure.
mhm, yeah. I mean, I gotta say this. To my eye, the sign on this vernacular, like 1970s something. Makes perfect sense. I mean, it does. It's sort of like, it's of the time and it's of the place, it's of the type of structure.
Well, sure, you've got
But-
this long linear
Yes,
backdrop and this
yes.
long linear sign.
Yes. That's how we get there. You'd think it would be easy.
There's no maintenance provision for signs.
There is,
It's a
but
requirement for maintenance for signs.
Yeah.
You
no
have to
signs
do
are
it.
here to be erected, altered, or changed, except in conformity with the provisions of the ordinance.
Found another mock-up that's white letters, gray background, restaurant market, it's a little bit different than,
Mhm.
this is basically what I would suggest is equivalent to keeping it the same. The one with the logo is actually the same square footage as what's there, because they reduced the overall dimensions to include the bump out on the logo.
Mhm.
So this is what I would propose is barely,
Which one are you proposing?
like the bottom one without the logo is pretty much identical if you look at the picture of what's there.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there's a, so I guess.
Can you
I
put
should-
that right in front of the owl so I can see it?
You know, the owl.
Ah,
the owl-
okay, that's excellent. Oh, thank you very much. That's really good.
That the one that's 209 by 22? you have one proposed that was 31.93 square feet, 209 inches by 22 last year.
This is the one I'm showing.
I don't. What I'm getting at with my work being, I tend to repeat myself.
I believe that's
But-
correct, Kim.
But the maintenance provision obviously is
If
about
that's, if it's
conformity.
209 by
But when
22,
you
it's
look
31.
at section
You got-
4, there is
zone people.
maintenance provision
consider that
for
one.
non-conformity.
Instead of the
Why don't
309
we
by
have?
22.
I think they.
That percentage too?
Yeah.
Well, that's that committee that meets on Tuesday.
I'm gonna take that up, yeah.
That would have been the
This
original.
one, this one, someone's got down here, I assume it's, hang on here, huh?
Yeah.
Saying
Why are some
31.93 square
non-conformities
feet.
being allowed to be maintained
See,
in
and
others?
that's 209 by 22, that would meet your zone, that would meet it.
Yeah,
If that's
I don't see why they take too long.
22, I'm sorry, 31.93
Sure,
instead of
okay.
309
Just shrink it.
inches.
Us Scotsmen, we can sniff out food, we bought 10 miles away.
Alright, this one is 31.93 square feet.
If it's 31.93 square feet, that's less than 32 square feet, you need that.
Then it's Mazel tov.
1.9.
Because this one's 331, that's over 50.
But they had put that up 150% just to show the sign.
What's that?
I think they had boosted one of those up to 100.
Well, one's 331 inches by 22, which is 50 point, whatever I said earlier. And then 209 by 22 is 31.93 square feet according to that.
Okay.
So if
That's-
we replaced the sign and kept it under 32 square feet, we wouldn't even have to put in a pocket.
You would need a permit for me, but you wouldn't have to.
You don't come to us.
You don't get to listen to us struggle with it.
Even though the aggregate is over 32 square feet,
Yeah.
Smaller.
but it's existing and you're lessening it, you're not increasing the size. So you'd be able to get a permit through me,
That makes sense.
if that's 31.93 square feet, 209 by 22. I don't have my calculator with me.
It's, I think it says it up there under the.
So, yeah, so it's underneath. I had a calculator on here, where'd it go?
31.93 square feet.
Yeah, is that 209 inches
Mhm.
divided by 12 and then 22 by? Yeah, if that's what
That
you,
seems to be,
if you go with that, you meet the zoning.
nobody disagrees with that.
31 by 22. According to the sign people.
I think I understand our two options now, is they either reduce it to meet
I mean,
or submit a conditional use application.
And then come back and have this discussion again.
Mhm.
Which we're willing to do, but
if that's what it looks like on the building, the 209 by 22, it's not much different than 331, if that's correct.
Doesn't matter,
See that.
then you can
Yeah.
change colors and fonts, see, that's. what's-
yeah, you can do that. I
what's
mean,
sort of-
So no problem in changing.
I'm sorry.
Lounge off of there.
no, it's just the size. That's the only issue.
And then this, yeah, it's 209.
You can say roller coaster.
You
you
do
know?
that. and-
Yeah.
Well, alright, well, thanks for clarifying.
Okay.
Well, I hope it is clarified.
Clear as mud.
I think it's pointed out a deficiency in our ordinance.
Absolutely.
I know where it being a situation, that property down there is probably one of the larger ones, well,
Yeah.
it was until
Yeah.
now, the Asta crew is changing, but
Yeah,
it's just been there and no change at all.
and the SQ is gonna keep the little sign that was there before.
That's the cool.
SQ, Q, Q.
But how many places here in town you have a business that occupies both sides, two different streets?
Unique situation.
Uh,
Don't know. Don't know, but again, if that is the issue, that you've got signs. 1, 2, 3 signs, or however many that exceed 32 square feet, there's a provision for that.
It's allowing you an aggregate.
It's
but
allowing,
saying-
yeah, it's allowing
saying
us
the
to
size
waive
can't
that
exceed
provision
32
if you've
square
got
feet.
signs A, B, and C. but
If you
not
go
if,
by the one,
not if one sign is more than 32 square feet, but maybe you have a workable solution here.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We're just trying to clean her up.
Yeah, that's great.
So we don't need to come back if it's 32. right?
doesn't, you don't need to
If it's-
fence.
Mhm.
If it's
You're always
32
welcome,
square feet
Matt.
or less.
Yeah, you can come anytime you want. and
We're
join
here
the
twice a
fun.
month.
Always exciting.
We try to be good on that
That's right.
area of the road.
Thank you for what you're doing with it.
Mhm.
I've heard lots of sad trombones about the fact that you're not gonna be open all winter.
Yeah. The only one. Couldn't be here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We need more year-round.
we need more
Residents.
year-round residents.
We do,
Yes, we do.
hopefully things will change.
Mhm.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
So, Kim, yes, just reach out to you on a permit.
Yeah, just, you know what, Penny, just print the land use and building permit application.
Okay, item number 4,
And
other.
then submit
Is
the
there
two
any
others.
other?
Lizzo hasn't met, it's meeting next week.
You guys know in December, we only had one board.
As of now,
As
who,
of-
who knows what could happen?
Yeah, we
There
may,
could be a flurry.
we may not have any board
What's that?
in December.
Do we have anything currently?
We have something coming, yeah,
Alright.
excavation going that I know of. That's all I know of. There might be something else coming, but I don't know. I'm not gonna be at the December 11th planning board meeting.
Mhm.
And this is the only November meeting.
Yep, right.
Because they only meet once a month in November, and December.
Yeah.
Just for the holidays.
It's our holiday present from the town.
Just reminding everyone.
Mhm. All right, well then, I guess there's only one other item on the
I
agenda.
move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Yo.
Aye.
I, Tracy Keller, I.
All right,
I hope you feel better.
Hammer time.
yeah.
Well, when the bees leave my nose, I'll be feeling better. Yeah.
Right. Adjourned.